At the end of my first week at the Library of Congress, I became overwhelmed with its complexity, and I actually thought about returning to my prior position as General Counsel at the National Archives. However, after meeting with the Chief Financial Officer, I walked back into my office, and I looked out the window, and I saw a rainbow over the majestic Library of Congress Thomas Jefferson building. I took it as a sign. 18 years later, I'm still here. So how did I get here? When I graduated from Cleveland Marshall College of Law, I knew I wanted to work for the government. It was then, and still is now, a privilege to be representing the United States of America. I'm a career civil servant. I've been with the government for 38 years. I've been at the Departments of Education, Department of Justice, the National Archives, and for the past 18 years at the Library of Congress. Working at the library, an institution that has been around for 216 years, is a real privilege. Our mission is to collect, preserve, and make accessible the world's cultural heritage, making all of it available for those fortunate enough to come visit us in Washington, D.C., but virtually online, and I am fortunate to be able to do this. So people often ask me, what do you do as the General Counsel for a library? Well, the simple response is I work with collections, money, and administrative matters. We are not a lending library, so fortunately, I don't have to go after people who owe fines. But what is the Library of Congress? It's the largest library in the world. We have over 162 million items. We have over 840 miles of shelves, which is essentially a round trip between Washington, D.C. and Cleveland. We add to our collections about 10,000 items each day. And we have a staff of about 3,100 dedicated employees. They're our real treasures. We're also the home of the Congressional Research Service, the United States Copyright Office, the Law Library, the National and International Outreach Office, and the main library, Library Services. But I also, wow, look at that. But I also need to debunk two myths about the library. First, we don't have every book, but we have more than anyone else. The library collections span over 3,000 years, from clay tablets to Mayan vases to web archives and video games. The second myth, that the Library of Congress is only for Congress, not so. It's for all of you. Not only for those researchers who use our vast resources online, but also as Americans whose stories are reflected in our collections. There are lots of legal issues at the library, and I spend much time advising the Librarian of Congress and her senior management about these legal issues. That's what lawyers do. But my job is also to help midwife an 18th century institution into the 21st century world. The law is a powerful tool for that. For example, a few years back, we negotiated a contract for a new type of spectral imaging technology. It was originally developed for the military. Using this technology, our talented preservation folks discovered that in his original draft of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson actually wrote subjects and then scratched it out and wrote citizens. The library had had that document for over 200 years, but it was not until today's technology were we able to examine Thomas Jefferson's thinking process and his own shifting reality. As a lawyer, my job is also to be a facilitator and a problem solver, to help managers see both options and obstacles. I get to help the library acquire beautiful stuff, and I get to help you see it as well. That's what we collect, preserve, and make. We collect the after, we preserve the before, and we provide access to both. going to show you the next picture is a picture of the Wurtzmüller map. Why is that important? This is a 1507 map. We call it our birth certificate of America because it's the first map that has the word America on it. So I was fortunate to be involved in the negotiation to purchase that. It only cost $10 million. Actually, we had donors who gave us 5, and Congress was generous and gave us the other 5. However, besides being the head lawyer for this amazing institution, I'm also a docent. And I actually make sure everybody gets to see that, because if you've paid taxes, you paid for that. But I get to take people around as a docent, which is the library tour guide, and I get to explain, especially to lawyers, how I negotiate or how we negotiate agreements, actually not only for the library for the purchase of items, but also for the construction of facilities, like our National Audiovisual Conservation Center, built in an old Cold War bunker, renovated, and donated to the Library of Congress by the Packard Humanities Institute. It's an absolute beautiful facility. So one of our great challenges as an institution is how do we make sure future generations learn from us the way we learn from the past, especially given the ever-changing technology shifts. Let me give you an example of what libraries are facing. A great treasure that we have is one of 3 pristine copies of the Gutenberg Bible. We keep it safe and on display for those fortunate enough to come to Washington to see it, but we also have it online and annotated for anyone with access to a smartphone. Before Gutenberg's printing press, there were 10,000 books in all of Europe. Within 10 years, there were 10 million. The scale of the spread of knowledge shifted exponentially to a scale unprecedented until today. The printing press made it possible for Galileo's study of the moons of Jupiter, Starry Messenger, to be published in Venice, and in less than 10 years, it was cataloged in the Imperial Library of Beijing. We also have a copy of that, and I'm told that Galileo's fingerprint is in it. That's what we've been told. We are in a world of exploding content. The average lifespan of a website is 45 days. So how do we decide what to collect and how often? Our collection policies continue to evolve as the world changes. What does Congress need to do its work today? And what will researchers want to look at 100 years or 500 years from now? Curation is the eternal exercise in triage, because we can't possibly collect everything. But we know that if we don't collect it, it's gone. In the early days, the library didn't collect nitrate film, and now we know that over 70% of silent era films and 50% of pre-1950 films don't exist anywhere. Our present challenge is to make sure that history doesn't repeat itself with our digital heritage. And it's my job to make sure that that happens within the complex legal web of contract, copyright, intellectual property law, because the law, as you just heard, isn't always evolving as fast as technology. At the same time, digital tools enhance our abilities to allow us to connect with people and our collections in entirely new ways. We still preserve books with brushes and glue pots, but we also use 3D imaging and cloud-based services. Our access mechanisms have shifted from card catalogs to search engines. We still make Braille books, but we also make accessible books for the blind. Once, a historically important figure would have had to decide where to place her papers, and people would have had to go to see that, to that institution to see it. Today, the library is a proud home of the Rosa Parks collection, and we've put it online for you. So if you want to make Rosa Parks' feather-like pancakes for Sunday breakfast, all you have to do is look it up, and if you like peanut butter, it's in there. Helping to acquire that collection and make it accessible is one of my proudest moments at the library. But the challenges of preserving these unique moments in history is staggering. One of our successful efforts is the Veterans History Project. It began in 2000, and today we have over 100,000 oral histories from veterans of all wars. For many, it was the first time they told their amazing stories. I was fortunate enough to be able to have taken some of these histories, and it's brought tears to my eyes when I've heard their stories. For example, the pilot whose plane was shot down in Vietnam, and he told me about being carried to a prison in a wheelbarrow, because apparently pilots were very valuable. We still take oral histories, and I'm going to ask all of you, go out there and take those oral histories of veterans. You might know veterans, your aunts, uncles, grandfathers. We have a kit online, so that's all you have to do is go online and get a kit. And please help us to collect. We also have interviews of former slaves and civil rights leaders. We also have oral histories from folks in Pearl Harbor and 9/11. And we have the StoryCorps collection, which now includes over 100,000 stories from just regular people. We have the Twitter archive. Why? Because years from now, our great-grandchildren are going to say, "What's a tweet?" And we'll have that information for them. Even the new librarian tweets. It's fascinating to work through all of these legal issues, and when we're involved in creating and collecting social media and digital works. And I am incredibly fortunate to have a wonderful and talented staff to help me. But I worry about not capturing important letters and correspondence and drafts. So given computers, people don't save drafts anymore. We text. So the letters between John Adams and Thomas Jefferson would probably have been deleted right after reading. A rich history lost. In a digital world, people are less likely to save drafts. And we lose the insight into individuals' creative process. One of my favorite examples comes from a music division. And the library has Rodgers and Hammerstein's rough drafts, which illustrate Oscar Hammerstein's thinking as he wrote My Favorite Things. In a folder he titled Good Things, you see on the yellow paper, and we have lots of those yellow papers, it says, "Riding downhill on my big brother's bike, these are a few of the things that I like." That didn't make it into the song. What would we do without these drafts? Well, my dad was a newspaper reporter, and my mom kept almost everything that he wrote. We also have the love letters that they wrote back and forth to each other when he was training to be a pilot in World War II. An amazing resource that my niece is in the process of digitizing. It tells us so much about them. Every time I look at it, it makes me smile. It tells us so much about them, their lives, and the times. And I'm sure all of you have photos, scrapbooks, textbooks, letters about your family and friends that you want to save. And we're so lucky to have those kinds of things. So how does this all relate to you? I guess I want you to think of yourselves and your life as a library, but I also want you to think about preservation, saving all of your own history. Don't lose those letters and photos and your favorite things. Find a way to preserve them. The Library of Congress is here for you as a window to the past, but it is and still should continue to be a reflection of you, the present generation. Life is short. Help us to remember. Thank you.